All right, we're going to keep the program moving. We are getting towards the end of the day here, and nobody wants to miss the next panel. It's all about local roots, which we know is very important here in Ohio. We have an amazing moderator that I'm very excited to introduce. He is a pillar here in Ohio. He leads the Ohio Cannabis Health and Business Summit, otherwise known as OCHBS, which will be in September in Columbus this year, September 23rd and 24th. This guy is wonderful. He treats everybody like family. In fact, he has his family at his conference, and I'm glad he's part of mine too. So I would love to welcome to the stage the amazing Lenny Berry.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, everyone. As she said, I feel like I'm at home, right? Everybody in this room I pretty much know and have dealt with at the conference, and appreciate Patrick and Elliot for talking me into this, to let me come up here. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel. We'd like to introduce Miss Emilie. I'd like to introduce Mandy. Mr. Ed, and Camilo. So Lori pretty much spelled it out for me, so I don't have to talk about myself, which I normally hate to do anyway. Let's go ahead and let the panel talk about who they are and what they do for the industry.
Hello. Rock on. I got it the first time. My name is Emilie Ramach. I'm the Vice President of Business and Governmental Affairs for BeneLeaves. We are a standalone processor manufacturer located up in Columbus, Ohio.
Hi, my name is Mandy Morton. I am one of the owners for Locals. We are an independent dispensary in Columbus and Cincinnati, and I'm super excited to see everyone here today.
I'm Ed Keating. I'm the chief economist at Emerald Intel, and I'm also one of the co-founders of Cannabis Media. So we've been tracking cannabis licenses across the country for about 11 years now, and helping people understand the business intelligence that you can gather from that data.
Afternoon, everyone. Camilo, Basto with Highgate Capital Partners. We do mostly M&A, debt equity raises, and advisory work.
We're getting straight to it. What do you see the biggest challenge right now, or the biggest pressure on your business? We'll start with Emilie. Go down. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a great question and pretty heavily loaded. You know, there's a lot of different just things that we all need to navigate in this industry. I think one of the things that's a little bit challenging, just especially in Ohio, because as BeneLeaves, we work with a lot of multi-state accounts. And so whenever we start to onboard different accounts that are established in other states, you know, it's kind of like giving them the rundown of Ohio as far as like what it takes to bring your brand here. And so that can sometimes be a challenge because they need to personalize, you know, their packaging to Ohio, you know, and remove a lot of their imagery, verbiage, just different sort of things that they have on their packaging and labeling. So we've been navigating that. I think a challenge right now, and this just kind of goes to just our industry being so new. You know, we really are just kind of like a baby in this right now in Ohio, and eventually things will level out and they will be easier and more standardized. But I think just right now, you know, it's kind of like the eternal pivot. You know, we joke a lot about in our industry where we get, you know, the guidance emails like Thursday, Friday afternoon, and sometimes it's pretty major operational pivots. So I would say that's a challenge. And, you know, as an industry in Ohio, we work really hard, you know, with the DCC, with each other to try to navigate all of this. But I will say that's probably one of the biggest operational challenges for us right now.
Well, before we go to Mandy, so because you guys are like, you know, the mega processors in the market on the independent side, in my opinion. So you have all these brand partners. How are you helping them guide with all of these challenges, and they're coming from out of state and don't understand what's happening in the market?
Yeah, so it's a conversation. you know, and a lot of times it's just explaining, look, you know, Ohio is operating medical, we are adult use, but we are very, you know, new, and we are operating under a lot of the medical guidance. And so there is a lot of things that, you know, with the CR certifications and just the packaging and labeling, and it really is up to the DCC and up to your agents to give a, you know, have a temperature check to see whether something's going to get approved or not. So it really is, I mean, it's kind of like back to the basics. It's just having a full-blown dialogue. And, you know, what I've done personally with BeneLeaves is we kind of have like this onboarding package. And with the recent guidance, it's, hey, you know, we need licensing agreements, we need your CRs, we need your labels, all your different SKUs, your ingredients, and stuff like that. So it really is just a conversation to try to make it as seamless as possible.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mandy.
Yeah, and from the retail side, I think it's more obviously combating the new competition in town. Like obviously Columbus and Cincinnati is a huge market, and we see new stores opening up every week. So it's, you know, are your discounts still working for you? Now we're at a point where we might be fighting for customers, and being independent, you know, we don't have the budget to do a lot of the marketing stuff that other people do, or take the chances on the marketing stuff that other people might get fines for. We're just not willing to take the risk on that. So it's like, how do you do this in a space most compliant as possible, but do it also in a way that is kind, and we're all here together and trying to sell the same fucking weed. So let's all do it in a way where we are, you know, at least getting along with each other the next day. So that's our biggest thing, is just like trying to develop these relationships inside and outside the industry, because it's not just us anymore. But I do think that there are a lot of things that we could do that could get us, you know, back to those medical numbers that we had. I think that it's kind of disappointing that our store did, you know, not, you know, we're getting back to that, but like we shouldn't have had to fight for that in between to be at those medical numbers in a rec space. It should have been a little bit easier. But, you know, we have to play by the rules, so we do that.
Can you elaborate on the medical numbers?
I mean, there was a big push when we went rec. Like our stores did much better. It was a flip, and then there was just like a cool, and then, you know, some legislation came out, kind of made it nervous for people. They didn't really know where they were shopping. So we're heading back to trying to educate people. You know, this is a dispensary. We got the green symbol on the door. Make sure that you're coming to the right place. And I see other dispensaries doing it. Love it. Keep doing it, because that's really the way that we're going to get to customers that are scared to go to a dispensary, might not know that they're going to the right spot. They might think they're still going to a smoke shop. So just giving that information to them, and then when they come in, making sure that, because we have a lot of people that come in and say, this is my first time in a dispensary, not just in Ohio, ever. And it's like, oh my gosh, thank you for picking us. We love you. And just making sure that they know that it's a space that is, it's going to be, you know, we're going to listen to you. If it's something where you're trying to, you know, work on an ailment or something, we're going to listen to you. We're not just going to sell you some stuff and have you walk out and hope you come back. We want you to come back because of the experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ed?
So all those things that you both just described create data challenges and opportunities. When those regulations change, the data often changes that we're able to aggregate. At the same time, you know, we track about 130 regulators. We play a lot of data whack-a-mole, and every day some state changes something, or the report they gave us last month doesn't have something that we've come to rely on or that our customers have. And that gets pretty tricky when we've got banks and financial tech companies using us for license verification. They want to make sure that, you know, if they're going to lend to them or if they're going to give them a bank account, that the data is good. So it's an ongoing problem. It's not necessarily a new one, but it never changes. I mean, there's always something coming in through the data team that, you know, with these new rules and regs, it creates some challenges and then sometimes opportunities. Like the last panel talked about federal licensure. Well, that's something we're going to have to start tracking too, and making sure that here's a state license, here's the federal one, and here's how they harmonize.
Milo?
So currently, What we're experiencing on the federal side is creating opportunities, but it's also creating a holding pattern. Until we get clarity in terms of what the federal government is going to do, the FDA, the DEA, the IRS, there are investors that are calling, but they're calling as a wait and see. That's one of the hurdles that we have. The second hurdle that we have is mitigating client expectations. I think a lot of people look at historical performance and anticipate future performance to be based on that. Having data, to your point, Ed, is critical in terms of mitigating their expectations. And the third thing is states. Ohio in particular, we've requested data from Ohio, from the state, and they just don't reply for months. They don't give us the data that we need. You know, to quantify what she has been saying, that you do better, right? We quantify a lot of what we look at on a state basis, on an individual dispensary basis. So how do you know how a specific dispensary is doing in terms of comparing it to its peers? If you're doing, on the adult side, if you're doing $4 million on a gross revenue basis, is that above or below average, right? How could you anticipate these type of questions in terms of valuation? So data, to your point, Ed, is critical, and it's not easy to get from the state of Ohio. There's other states that are actually a lot easier.
So let's stick with the data. When we're talking about the regulations from the state side and now the federal side, right, changing the industry, what are you looking for when it comes to lending or working with, you know, independent operators or people that's trying to borrow from you?
So Ohio is unique in the sense that Ohio still has value in paper licenses. And that is not the case throughout the country. So a 10B license still has a lot of value. You know, product manufacturing license still has a lot of value. Cultivation license has actually an enormous amount of value. Because it's, you know, some people are upset about the SB 56. In terms of investors' valuations, it actually helps tremendously. You're capped at 400 dispensary licenses. When you start doing comparisons across the country, Ohio is probably most paired to Illinois, right? Like, so we look at Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has 13 million people, but it doesn't have recreational. You look at New Jersey, it has 9 million people, but it's oversaturated, right? So Illinois is probably the best comparison to Ohio. They have about almost 13 million people. You guys have a little above 12 million people. You both have both medical and rec. And when you start looking at the surrounding states, Ohio is actually better positioned because 3 of the states don't allow any cannabis, either medical or recreational, whereas here, you guys share one state in Indiana, right? You have the most saturated state up in Michigan, one of, I should say, which has flooded the northern border with cheap weed. Hopefully that changes with Michigan increasing their tax rate. So you look at the dynamics on the state basis, you look at the dynamics on the federal basis, how this is going to change. Is the state going to get smart and all of a sudden mimic their adult use to medical, so it's all treated as medical? We don't know what state is going to do that. We anticipate that states will probably get smart to do this. Specifically, when we start looking at licenses, each license is valued differently. When we're looking at businesses in general, Ohio has a pretty high retention rate for valuation, right? So Ohio, you're looking at, you know, net sales or 80% of gross sales on a retail basis. You know, this is on average. Then you have to look at where they're located, how many competitors are around that location, where are the closest competitors, who those competitors are, et cetera. So it really, you need to fine tune those details. That being said, we've also looked at gross revenues on the adult side for Ohio, and in 2024, the average dispensary was doing about $4 million on the baseline on adult sales. This year, it's trended up about 28% to about a little over $5 million. So that's, you know, that's where the average is. That's how we look at dispensaries. That's how you would be basing your loans or investment portfolio on these particular assets.
So with all that being said, what I heard was Ohio's the #1 market.
Ohio is a very strong market. There's probably, it's between Missouri and Ohio is probably the two strongest markets currently in the states.
Love it. Yeah, what do you have to add to
Yeah,
that?
it's hard to follow what Camilo said in terms of the specificity of that data, but those Midwestern markets have seemed to focus on capping those licenses. And I think many of us have been in the industry long enough to see what happened in Oklahoma, where they got up to, I think, 12 or 13,000 licenses, and now they're riding that curve back down as they try and right-size the market. And it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle. So I think this sort of mandated cap allows there to be predictability, which I think from an investor standpoint and hopefully from an owner standpoint gives some comfort and a chance to chart a path forward.
So when you were talking about the patient numbers, Mandy, for the retail side, what does the consumer sentiment look like now with the regulations and laws are changing?
Yeah, we saw a drastic shift, obviously, in med versus rec customers right when it switched, and we haven't gained that back yet. I think that that's huge. That's something that we're talking about as a team is like, if pricing, which it is, pricing is the biggest thing. It's the biggest thing we hear when people come in. If that is the case, let's work with you to get a med card because you're going to at least save in tax. And it's not really getting picked up yet. I think we need to show it. Maybe because we incentivize our team to get their med cards, keep their med cards. Most of them we hired on were patients. We're all patients. And it's definitely, it's important to keep it and keep that med part of the program going, I think, like just from a personal aspect. And that's something that we're passionate about, and we're going to continue to do that. But yeah, there's a huge decrease. And that's something that, like, back on the data, like we, from a retail side, like we all need data. Everyone does. It doesn't matter what vertical you're in. You're like, you've got to have it done. And we just don't have it. And that's something that we're working on too, is building out our own internal program. And it kind of pulls a little bit from everyone that's out there now, because I think everyone kind of hones in on one area, whether it's like sales or whatever. It's like, everyone kind of has a little bit. We're trying to take a little bit from that and make it our own, because this is a space that is wide open for you to, like, you think that should be there, get on it, like put together a company, do something, because there's so many holes. We have so many holes and we need them filled.
Yeah, I'm building on Mandy's point. Once the announcement came out last week, I looked at the data that we had on patient counts, because we've tracked it in every state that it's available over time, so that you can look at one state or all states. And just quick back of the envelope, of the 30 states that we had good data for, over the last trailing 12 months, 20 of those 30 had seen a decline in patient count, and only 10 had seen an increase. And obviously, all eyes are going to be on that as we move forward, as there's certainly now an incentive to move people, I think, into a medical channel. So we're going to keep a close eye on that, as I'm sure everybody in this room will.
I want to touch back on that too, but Emilie, you had something to say?
I think it is so incredibly important to empower a medical program. I was out in Colorado during the Wild West days, and I've worked in medical markets, I've worked in adult use markets, and the shame of it is, we want adult use, because if you don't currently qualify with the qualification list in your state, chances are, if you're able to go back to the dispensary and purchase as an adult use customer, chances are you're going to find, oh, this is helping me sleep, or it's helping my anxiety or my nausea. That may not be a qualification on your state's list. And so, just from my time in retail, what we noticed a lot is the adult use customer essentially becomes a medical use customer, because they're finding that it's helping them with other ailments. And so, this kind of ties into the current rescheduling that we had. I just think it's so important for us to be able to empower our medical programs and, be loud about plant medicine and how important it is. And so I just think, especially with the rescheduling, it's so important for us to be able to have that research, the double-blinded placebo studies and everything that we need, for the medical community to start really just embracing our industry as well. So I do think it's incredibly important. And it was kind of sad, because I worked, in dispensary when we were medical, and we saw a big lift on the retail side. I mean, some of my favorite times in retail was seeing those true medical patients come into the dispensary, they're end of life, they have cancer, they're coming in and saying, hey, I don't want to be on this medicine anymore. I don't want to keep taking Dilaudid. I don't want to keep taking these opiates. Like, they're giving me MedHead. I just want to be present with my family. I want to be able to drive my car and, walk my dog and be present with my family during this time. And they would come into the dispensary and we would recommend, the products that we had. And, a week, 2 weeks later, a month later, they come in, full of color, they're happy. So it's like on the retail side, I mean, you just truly see the benefit of, just our plant and plant medicine in general. So I'm a huge proponent in empowering our medical patients.
Are consumers looking more for deals or quality? Like, on the dispensary side, and also when you're thinking about that from what you're making for the dispensaries to sell, like, where's the shift? Are there any shifts, even with the data head? Like, when these markets change, what SKUs start to elevate over other ones?
Yeah, I'm going to defer that one to my colleagues from Headset and Hoodie here because they really track that data. But I think looking forward, as we've just talked about, with the move toward medical, I think it's going to have a lot of impacts from a tax standpoint, an SKU standpoint, and what you inventory or don't inventory.
I think from a product standpoint too, obviously we're going to see some changes. You guys probably getting ready for that too from a dosage side. From the rec aspect, you're going to have those caps. So I think that it's also important if people want to have access to the majority of the products outside of infused pre-rolls, like moving to a medical position is really going to get you the whole gambit of our store. Again, outside those infused pre-rolls, sorry. But I think that people are definitely, once we do see these changes, if they do go into, if they do switch us over to where high dose is going to be only medical, that is definitely something we're going to see. Rec customers, they're not going to be super stoked about that because at this point, it doesn't matter. They want potency, they want, cheapest, and that's something that we're working on too is are all of the brands that we're bringing in really the best for our customers? And before it might have just been great for the medical customers, but I can't sit on a ton of inventory waiting for medical customers to come in. So we're going to definitely see a shift in what we're carrying for sure.
So from an investor standpoint, Camilo, when we're talking about 280E, as Ed mentioned, how does that entice you as an investor, knowing that these companies can now possibly claim these deductions, which therefore gives them more operating capital to work with?
So it's interesting you bring that up because you look at a lot of the large MSOs, they haven't been paying 280E. And there's even smaller players that there's an exception. If you're doing 25 million or less of EBITDA, you don't have to pay 280E. So I think it's great because now it's going to be memorialized, and the IRS, you don't have to play the guessing game. So I think that there's going to be more structure and more definitiveness around it. But for us, it really hasn't changed that much, right? I think we have to wait to see, is this going to be only for the medical side, if it's for the adult side, if it's for all cannabis, et cetera, to see how it actually plays out, right? So we're paying a lot of close attention to what the regulations are going to come out, because I think that's where everyone's focused on, is the 280E. We're more focused on what is the arbitrage opportunity here? Are you guys going to be able to do interstate commerce? Are you going to be able to sell to DEA licenses? There's a lot of other large issues at stake other than just 280E in terms of an investment and how the industry is going to move forward. It is an important aspect of it, but we don't consider it the most important aspect of it.
So when we're talking about finances, from his side of view, but for you expanding, you competing with, larger companies here, possibly competition coming into the market as well, what is it that you're looking for, and how will you help? How will you navigate, trying to stay competitive with those major players coming here?
I think for us, just being a small business in Ohio, we really take pride on being locally owned. and locally operated, and we're able to get out into our community and really humanize the relationship. Our sales team, myself, our leadership team, and we try to be out everywhere, like dispensaries, every event. We try to support everybody, because it really is like we're all in this together. Like we're all, navigating the regulations. We're all navigating Ohio. We're all navigating, each other with each other's businesses, and in this growing state. So I just think, it's a really exciting time, but it's also just really important just to empower each other and support each other throughout this experience. And I think for us, just being just a small business, it's just so important for us when you talk about like profitability and sales. I think so much of our just mindset and mentality has just been, how do we humanize this experience as much as possible and really just get into our communities and get to know the bud tenders, get to know, the different demographics, especially geographically in Ohio. I was just joking with somebody last night where it's like Ohio basically could easily be split up into like almost 4 states. You have like the 3 C's, and it's like a different vibe in every C. And then you have like the rural counties, and it's just so interesting. But yeah, it just really, that's just been our goal, is just to get out and get to know folks in our communities and talk about plant medicine.
On the competition, I think that's an interesting point to bring up, of sort of new competition. I wonder for you guys what it means with the change in how hemp is vended or not vended in the state. Because where I am in Connecticut, they sort of went through a similar thing and said, you can only buy hemp-derived products in a liquor store, certain percentage, or in a dispensary. And I think the shift is here too. So that's kind of a competitive shift. And some have said that was a $2 billion market. Well, if we stuff $2 billion into 400 stores, what does that mean?
Yeah, I think for us, that's a waiting game. And I think we say it a lot here in Ohio, just wait, just wait and see. And that is one that we're waiting and seeing on, because it is huge. And, again, we are all in this together. We have a lot of relationships with people on that side, and especially the CBD drink side. That is an area that we have people coming into the store and asking for. And we have to say, we have it, but it's a little bit more potent. Be really careful with it. There's a lid on it, close it, put it back in the fridge, because this is a totally different product. So if there is, a wait and see opportunity for us to put these products on our shelves, I would love to do that. We just are at a point where we're waiting and seeing. So I would love to put that $2 billion back into our side. That would be great, yes. But I think like from the brand perspective, like you were saying, Lenny, it's definitely, like Emilie said, we partner and sell products from people that are out in the community, that are building, that are here on panels, because we know that if, we are obviously, telling our customers that their products are good. We consume their products, we love them. But also when she's out and about, I know that she's going to say, run over to Locals. They got a drive-through, like place an order. Like BeneLeaves is there. So that's why we have these relationships. Emilie is like seriously the ambassador for us. And like I wouldn't be where I am without her. And I know there's other people that wouldn't be where they are without her either, because we have to share this stuff together. We have to share information and knowledge, or we're all just going to be sitting here going, why aren't we selling our stuff? And I think that's where I see the shift going, and I hope maybe it's just because that's who we surround ourselves with, but it's a great place. Like, come hang out with us, because it's making a change for me and my team, and I think that we're doing good things here.
Well, as we start to wind down, Camilo, what are you looking for right now?
In terms of what, like assets to invest in, retail? So I'm looking for a lot of stuff.
Well, yeah, the assets to invest here in this market.
One final point on this. One thing that I do want to share with you guys is, we work with a lot of MSOs. We represent MSOs, et cetera. We also represent a lot of smaller players. And one of the things that has always struck me is that in every state that we've looked at assets, the #1 grossing dispensary operator, whatever, has never been an MSO. Right, so in Massachusetts, the #1 operator is not an MSO, not a public MSO, I should say. Maryland, the same thing. Ohio, my understanding, it's a private. I don't want to say who they are, whatever, but they've told me who they were. but it's not TrueLeaf, it's not Verano, it's not Cureleaf, it's not GTI. They're not the number one. What we've learned through this experience is that you, the local operators, know your areas better than they do. So you have the potential of outperforming them in your local markets. So I just kind of wanted to share that with you because it has been a data point that we look at. In terms of assets, what do we look at? In Ohio specifically, we're looking for 10B assets. We're looking for retail assets. Cultivation tier 1 is very expensive. We've come across some tier 1 cultivations, but they're just very, very pricey. Tier 2 licenses are also pretty expensive. Assets here are hard to come by. So if, you know, we've been doing this for quite some time. There are people who are into cannabis for the long term. There are people that are into it for the short flip. There's people that have gotten tired. And these changes are just going to add more regulations, right? There's going to be more, not less. There's going to be more federal regulations. The FDA is going to get involved, et cetera. And if you guys are thinking that, well, you know, maybe now is time to exit, happy to help you in terms of valuations, happy to look at your assets, happy to talk to investors, potential acquisitions, et cetera, because there is a lot of interest in Ohio. With that being said, though, you know, we're looking at the data, and it seems like, yes, the gross sales have increased in Ohio. In 2026, they increased again. The thing that struck out to me is that it increased at a decreasing rate. So in 2025, it increased by about 46%. In 2026, we annualized the 3 months of 2026, it increased by 29%. So yes, it did increase, but it increased at a decreasing rate. The question is, what's going to happen for the rest of the year? We're starting to see, as it's happened in other states, that saturation is starting to accelerate. It's not going to decelerate. It's actually happening quicker in other states. The question is, when is it going to happen in Ohio? So if that is something that you'd like to discuss, something that you'd like to look at in terms of partnering up, you know, doing a JV, another idea would be to literally, you guys do a co-op where 8 of you get together and then you have purchasing power. That would be something of interest that could be, you know, worked at in Ohio. But we're looking for conversations and assets in Ohio, specifically across the board. Maybe not tier 1 because tier 1s are too pricey.
Well, great. Well, thank you. This is our time. You can catch us out in the hallway. You know, have more Q&A out there. But appreciate your time and thank you to this wonderful panel.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you to Local Roots. Let's give it up for them.